Hi, it's Xanthe here. I'm just going to try and give some thoughts about why I think colour analysis, as in which colours suit you, fails. One of the main reasons is actually the lighting conditions. Natural light is often cited as where you need your correct colours. Well, natural light varies multiple times a day, and I've in short videos showing that. And an artificial light, because it's too dark in my room otherwise. If I switch off this light, it's too dark for filming, so everything looks grey. That's neutral, that's cool, that's warm, which is orange, the cool is bluish, and then neutral. So, you know, try and look at this DIY chart. Now, colour analysis, I'm old enough to remember when it was all the rage in the 80s, and with the Colour Me Beautiful book, which I borrowed from the school library. So I had just 4 palettes, the summer, winter, autumn, spring, and a whole bunch of stereotypes that went with it. There were other people at the same time running with this concept, and it just turned into big business, and it's become, I think, with the social media, trendy again, and people making it their entire identity. Now, I had my colours done back in the 90s with the 12 set palette system. So I was type deep autumn, so I'll quickly squiz through this. Now, I don't follow it exactly for many reasons. One is because I am on a low income. It's looking at what's available, and so I might not buy exactly the colour, and also some of the colours which suit me well aren't even in here, and some of the ones that are in here don't even suit me that well. For example, they've got, for some bizarre reason, this mint green. So it's kind of more developed from sort of, people with fashion kind of a concept, really. Then they've tried to mould colour theory around it. You can see it's inconsistent when you look at today, the different palettes with the same name. You can look at different systems, and they argue with each other, debate about whether, for example, redheads, whether they're always a warm season, or whether, what colour hair or eyes or whatever, which season. There's just so much ridiculous stuff. I find that with my olive features to my complexion, I don't fit particularly well with it. I also noticed that with makeup, it's not necessarily the same as clothes. And the thing is, you don't have to pay 1 cent. There is basically so many people ripping people off to do their colours, to tell them what their season is, and it's largely, to my conclusion, this is largely a pile of bollocks. Some people say it's a scam. This whole marketing angle saying that you calibrate your eyes, calibrated drapes, all these training courses with their own in-house accreditations. I mean, it's basically, and some of these analysts don't even look that good in the colours that they are choosing to wear. Also, it fails to take into account the individual preferences and personality of the person. There's these stereotypes that, springs are vibrant and lively and bright, and winters are dramatic, and all of that. Sort of this kind of, your personality doesn't necessarily match what you're born with. And the thing is, people use all the time makeup to, increase the contrast, for example. A classic example of this is Katy Perry. I always see her cited as a classic winter by multiple people claiming to be colour analysts, experts, and they say because she's high contrast, because she's got black hair, pale skin, and bright eyes. I've seen some pictures shared by Katy Perry where her colouring is actually quite muted. She's kind of considered to be hair to be kind of muted, darker blonde or light brown kind of range. So not really that high contrast after all. And so it's kind of like, you know, this whole warm versus cool and all of that. I don't really fit that. When I was analysed, it was determined to be neutral, leaning warm. It's only semi-useful information in practice because colours are relative, and at the end of the day you can always just sample it. You can hold the colour up to yourself, and like if you were shopping in real actual shops, and if you're interested in something, hold up something, go near the window with some natural light. The natural light generally does give better colours, but since you're going to be under artificial light as well, why not see what it looks like under that as well? It's the same with makeup swatches. In New Zealand they have testers often with makeup. You can swatch it on my hand and see what it is like. With makeup, what I find generally is with my kind of colouring, which is considered to be the skin tone, I used to always call medium, but they seem to have with the subjective thing, re-evaluated what medium is, that it's a lot darker now. So I'm kind of between light medium and medium. I'm considered neutral and warm leaning neutral, and but not overly warm, not like really orange. Most foundations look way too orange on me. But that's partly the olive characteristics. I'm quite desaturated. Yeah, if I wear extremely muted colours, they often just look quite drab. So it's somewhere in the middle. One of the main things that I notice about colour analysis, and a lot of people are frustrated with it, and then getting all these different results with different people, is it doesn't cater for people in the middle. I could be considered to be someone in the middle, someone with more mixed features. And the lighting differences make a huge difference. For example, my hair usually looks dark brown. It's called neutral chocolate by my hairdresser. But in some lightings, it looks a lot, still brown, but it looks a lot softer and lighter. And then others, it looks really dark. And the same with my complexion. Sometimes I look yellowish. Sometimes I can even look a bit greenish, greyish. But if I put bold makeup swatches on, like a very vivid, especially the magentas, they tend to just be way too bold. And then also anything way too greyed. The grey does nothing for me. So there's a lot of room in between. Colour analysis is always trying to look at extremes: warm versus cool, light versus dark, or they say deep, muted or soft versus clear, or whatever names they want to give. Basically they mean high chroma. So the very high chroma colours like naturally kind of drawn to, but if they're too bold they can be a bit much on me. So a little bit of softness, but mutiness is, being an artist, there's a lot of ways you can mute down a colour without making it extremely grey. So you can still have depth and richness to it without going straight to grey. So what they do is people talk about soft, but then they also make it light. So soft means greyed generally, but there's a lot of room in between where it's slightly soft. So that's where I suit. Also these can be colours which suit me as, and people might compliment me or whatever, or if they're not wearing makeup, maybe not looking so the colour washed out or whatever. But I don't usually have a lot of colour in my complexion anyway. If I want to have a bit of colour in my cheeks or lips, I basically use makeup, because my colouring is very, very neutral, other than the patchwork because of different incidental sun or whatever. But I think that this whole simplification of colour theory There are some scientific aspects to colour theory, but when it comes down to it, practice, when you know, especially if you're mixing colours, etc., means more than just talking about, you know, theory or whatever. And with makeup in particular and clothing, I mean, I'm very, very casual with my preferences, but with makeup and clothing, etc., there's a whole realm of, you know, room for experimentation and self-expression. You know, I prefer very casual. I prefer mostly very natural makeup, but then also I'm considering I have very sensitive skin. One of the reasons I don't like wearing foundation is just because I actually, especially in photos, prefer how my skin looks, even with the flaws that I have. I prefer how I look without it. And I can, you know, if I want to just look a little bit less tired or minimise the flaws or whatever, you know, under eye circles, hyperpigmentation, any patches of redness or whatever, I can use that, you know, a bit of concealer, a bit of colour corrector or whatever, just tiny amounts. But I find the biggest difference for me is just to add a little bit of colour into my complexion with a bit of lipstick and a bit of blush. I do tend to get flushed cheeks only at certain times. For example, if it's very cold weather and then I go into a warm room, I can look very like a warmish pink in my cheeks, but otherwise it can be very kind of plain colouring. I first got called olive when I was in my as a teenager back in the 80s. I actually took it as an insult, so it's kind of amusing that it's sort of trending at the moment. The thing is that there seems to be such a range now of what gets called olive. You may as well look at all the different brands there are. I mean, it seems to be just as broad. Now, the thing with makeup is, this is something I do on a low income as well, is you can actually mix it together to make custom colours. So if I do want to match with, for example, if I do want to wear a little bit of foundation, I can adjust it to make it match better, because you know, I'm not going to spend an absolute fortune on trying a million foundations, and I prefer also just to go in my town and try the swatches on. People say, oh, don't try the swatches on your hand, you need to put on your face, and I'm not going to, for hygiene reasons, put that stuff on my face if I can avoid it. So it's a pretty good indication of putting it on my hand. You're gonna get a very good indication of, you know, especially if you go for one of these brands that does the, you know, splits things up into warm, neutral, cool, or whatever. For example, the L'Oreal True Match. Because when I try on the warm, everything looks too orange. The neutrals, some of them look not too bad, fairly close. There's not really much in the cool for my depth of colouring. But then that was too pink, but I can always tweak it with a little bit of, you know, cool green or something just to make it more exact. And then, you know, find that if I try it on about here for foundation, I can see which one is way off. Because my face is actually darker with the hyperpigmentation and incidental sun than my neck, the opposite what a lot of people say. At the end of the day too, it's what you like. I do have some red lipsticks, but I don't wear them very often. When I do, I usually mix them and then just soften them a wee bit, because otherwise, you know, there's a saying that your lips will arrive before you. But it's what you're comfortable with. I don't like really heavy makeup. It's possible I'm looking a little bit pink at the moment because I am feeling quite hot. It's quite humid at the moment. But at the end of the day, colour analysis fails those people in the middle. So people who don't have really dominant features, I mean, my dominant feature is considered to be mainly deep, but then I'm finding it's not necessarily dark because it can create some quite heavy shadowing, which may not have been an issue when I was younger. So some people were saying that your season never changes, but others are saying it can. Or, I feel that you're not necessarily stuck in any season, and it's easy enough to, to swatch, to figure out, whether you are more neutral or whatever. But with lipsticks and blush, I find those very, the Barbie doll type pinks or whatever are bad on me. And also the reds that are very, very strong magenta base are bad on me. It tends to be quite often, which are better, the sort of richer, little bit of brown, a little bit of maybe a bit of purple, but not the magenta kind of way, so a bit more muted. Even a mixture in the sense of like a little bit warmer, a warm muted pink, some of the rose kind of colours often are quite good. So kind of know from experience that, the medium to deeps are generally going to be better on me, whereas the makeup that has a lot of, this is like for blush or lipstick, has a lot of white in it, very pale, just sits on my skin like chalkiness. A little bit of lighter shimmer can be okay in small amounts. So I think that it's the easiest way is actually just try some on. And if you happen to have testers, and the thing is you can always hold up colours, and even it can look different in a photo, but take a photo of yourself and see what you think and compare them. If you were looking digitally, it's easy enough to, if you know a little bit of computer skills, to cut your face out and stick it on different colours and see what you think. So the characteristics are generally, I'll show you with an abstract. People tend to split it into, say, light colours. This abstract's based on what's called a CMY RGB colour wheel. So we've got, blue here, which is leans violet, so it's ultramarine blue. We've got our phthalo blue, which leans green. We've got turquoise, we've got green, we've got our lime green, yellow, orange, red, and then we've got our sort of cool red and magenta, and our violet and our purple and sort of indigo colour. So if you mix it with a lot of white, you get light colours. If you mix them with a bit of more or less the opposite, you get these more muted kind of colours. You can get fairly, so these are really kind of pale colours. You can get some with a little bit of white, these sort of brighter and a little bit lighter colours. These greys are actually mixtures of everything. So you can, get a neutral grey. Now, someone was arguing with me, saying about how a neutral grey was never going to look warm. Well, you stick a warm light on, you're going to get a warm grey. And those greys are actually still technically pigments of, particles of the paints I use, the red and the blue and the yellow or whatever. And you have to think about its perception of how our eyes work. And even when you're looking at the pixels or the colours on your computer screen, it's still just red, green and blue pixels, whether they're lit up or not. And it's an illusion that you see these different colours. Do these greys look like a bit mixture of red, blue and whatever other colours I've used? No, they don't, because our eye kind of blends it all together. And it depends on what's next to it. It depends on, with colours, if you hold it up to yourself, if how much it reflects up in a flattering way or not. And it depends even if you want to look like vibrant and healthy looking. Some people actually are in a subculture where they like to look like they're dead. That's the goal. So, they'll go for extremely, pale makeup, for example. Now, this colour here, I quite like it, but it's not in this. If I search through, let's have a look. So this is the Colour Me Beautiful New Zealand. So these are some of the colours, some of the neutrals. I tend to prefer the darker ones in general, rather than say something like that. Not really a fan of that Camel on me, for example. So as far as hair colours concerned, something in the sort of red, dark browny range, generally best on me. This is my natural hair colour. But I have tried fashion colours, you know, bright violet and copper. I do get complimented on the reds when I wear them, but it's quite different from that. It's a complex colour. I can see it's got, if you look at it closely, it's got a bit of black in it, but it's also got a bit of a burgundy colour. So there's actually lots of colours. So some of these different colours are kind of a little bit too light in my preference, or a little bit too warm. I quite like on me these kind of colours. I don't know why that's in there. Some of these colours, I quite like these kind of ones. I definitely probably would not wear this one. I probably quite like, you know, those kind of colours, sort of more an eggplant. It's not in there. And then there's a few other colours which aren't in there, which I've been complimented on. At the end of the day, it's just what you like, and I just don't see the absolute sense. I'm paying an absolute fortune. Some people have the cheek to charge absolute fortune, especially with virtual, where they're just flicking through a few screens. It comes down to subjective comparison. Thanks.